Kenny Smith just said something on Inside the NBA that made the entire studio go silent. The two-time NBA champion looked directly at the camera and admitted that a 22-year-old Turkish center is better at basketball than he ever was. And the way he said it, with complete sincerity, made it one of the most powerful moments in the show's history. It happened during a February 2024 broadcast, right after the crew had just finished watching highlights of Alperen 14-assist performance against the Clippers. Kenny Smith, known as the Jet during his playing days, had been unusually quiet during the entire segment, just watching the plays unfold with a look that his co-hosts couldn't quite read. For context, Kenny Smith was an excellent NBA point guard. He won 2 championships with the Houston Rockets in 1994 and 1995, was known for his court vision and basketball IQ, and had a 10-year career that most players would dream of having. He's not someone who typically engages in self-deprecating comparisons, but something about Alperen's performance that night had clearly struck a chord. After the highlights finished, Ernie Johnson turned to Kenny, expecting the usual analyst breakdown. Instead, Kenny took a long pause, looked at his notes, and then said something nobody expected. "I need to be honest about something," Kenny began, his tone more serious than usual. "I played this game at a high level. I won championships, but watching what this kid just did, he sees the game better than I ever did." The studio went quiet. Shaq and Chuck exchanged glances. This wasn't a joke or hyperbole. Kenny was being completely serious. What followed was one of the most insightful basketball analyses ever delivered on Inside the NBA. Kenny, speaking with the authority of someone who truly understands the game at its highest level, broke down exactly why he felt Alperen's court vision exceeded his own. "Look at this pass here," Kenny said, pointing to a replay. "He catches the ball, and in the same motion, without even looking, he knows exactly where the weak side defender is rotating from. That's not a play you make because you practiced it. That's a play you make because you see the game in a different dimension." Kenny then compared it to his own playing style. "When I was playing, I was fast, I could shoot, I could run the offense. But I had to think about reads. This kid, he doesn't think, he just knows. That's a level of basketball intelligence that you can't teach." Shaq jumped in. "Kenny, come on, man, you won 2 rings. But Kenny wasn't backing down. "Shaq, I won 2 rings because I played with you and Hakeem. This kid is making role players look like all-stars with his passing. That's a different kind of value." The honesty was stunning. Here was a former NBA champion on national television, freely admitting that a young player possessed a skill, court vision, that exceeded his own at the same age. But Kenny wasn't done. "The thing about Alperen that separates him," Kenny continued, "is that he plays center like I played point guard, but he does it better. He's 6 feet 11 inches, and he's seeing passing lanes I could only see because I was quick enough to create them. He creates them just by existing in the right space." What made the moment even more powerful was when Kenny revealed a personal encounter that had happened weeks earlier. During a Rockets game that Kenny attended as a broadcaster, he had the chance to talk to Alperen about the mental side of passing and court vision. "I asked him how he sees the game so clearly," Kenny explained to the crew. "And you know what he told me? He said he learned it playing soccer as a kid in Turkey, that soccer taught him to see spaces and movements before they happen." That blew my mind. Kenny then shared something that made the moment even more meaningful. "I told him about my playing days, about how I used to study film for hours, trying to improve my court vision. And he looked at me kind of confused and said, 'You had to study it?' I just see it." That's when I realized this isn't learned behavior. This is natural genius. The story resonated because it highlighted the difference between acquired skills and innate gifts. Kenny worked incredibly hard to become a championship-level point guard. Alperen simply has a gift that can't be taught or learned. He sees the game in ways that others physically cannot. Chuck Barkley, never one to let a moment go without commentary, added, "So what you're saying is, this kid is naturally better at your best skill than you ever were, and you're okay with that?" Kenny smiled, but his response was serious. "Chuck, I'm not just okay with it. I'm honored to watch it. This is what basketball evolution looks like. Kenny's admission had an immediate impact on how people viewed both Alperen and Kenny himself. For Alperen, having a former championship point guard publicly acknowledge that his court vision was superior to a proven NBA player's gave him credibility with skeptics who still questioned his abilities. But perhaps more importantly, it elevated Kenny's own reputation. His willingness to be honest about a young player's superiority in a specific skill demonstrated a level of basketball maturity and selflessness that resonated with fans and analysts alike. That's what makes Kenny special as an analyst. ESPN's Zach Lowe said during his podcast, "He's secure enough in his own legacy to recognize greatness in others, even when it means admitting they're better than he was." The moment also reinforced something that Inside the NBA has always done better than any other sports show: genuine, unfiltered basketball analysis from people who actually played the game at the highest level. Today, when people talk about Alperen Şengün's court vision, Kenny Smith's analysis is often cited as one of the most authoritative endorsements of his abilities. When a two-time NBA champion who built his career on basketball IQ tells you that a young player sees the game better than he did, that means something. For Kenny, the moment wasn't about diminishing his own career. It was about recognizing that basketball evolution doesn't stop. Every generation produces players who do certain things better than the previous generation did, and acknowledging that doesn't take anything away from what came before. "I played with Hakeem and Shaq," Kenny said at the end of that broadcast. "I know what basketball genius looks like, and I'm telling you, watch this kid from Turkey. He's got something special that doesn't come around often." The humble admission from a champion to a young player wasn't just good television. It was a passing of respect from one generation to the next, captured on live TV for millions to witness. Sometimes the greatest compliment isn't praise. It's honest recognition from someone who truly knows the game. And Kenny Smith's willingness to say he's better than I was might be the highest compliment Alperen Şengün could ever receive.